I have noticed that there is a very scarce information about psychosophy in Western sources. There are many people that are interested in socionics but have very little knowledge in psychosophy. So today's stream will help those people to tell apart these typologies. They seem very similar at first glance, but if you dig into these both theories, you will know that they are very, very different in their structure, in their nature. It is a comparative table that shows, I think, the main feature about socionics and psychosophy, the first steps in understanding these typologies. So what do we have here? We have different quantity of types. We have 16 types in socionics and 24 types in psychosophy. These typologies are describing different layers of our psyche, because socionics shows and studies mostly information processing. When we type, for example, a person in socionics, we are analyzing the information that he's talking about. And according to this info, we make our conclusions about his strong or weak functions, aspects, quadras, etc. While psychosophy, roughly speaking, is describing behavior and down-to-earth and everyday priorities of a person. It is quite different layers of psyche, while both socionics and psychosophy tell a certain part, and they can describe a certain part, significant part of any personality. And what is common in socionics and psychosophy, they are describing inborn types, and they do not change during the lifetime. Many people ask, does socionic type change or does psychosophic type change? We always tell no, because both of these types are inborn, made, and then do not change during lifetime. These types are quite obvious when we look at small children, for example. When a child is born and when it starts walking and talking, we already hear the semantics of socionic types, and we see some behavioral patterns that are connected with psychosophic type. So from early childhood we can identify socionic and psychosophic type if we have correct working methodology. So we have such experience in observations of small children, for example, when they are observed in early childhood and later when they go to school, when they become teenagers and so on. So socionic and psychosophic types do not change. We have observations of 10 and 20 years about our acquaintances, about some people that we know for many years, and their types have not changed as well. The same is with famous people. We constantly type famous people on socionics and psychosophy, and they demonstrate the same thing. Their types do not change over the time, but there can be some changes in third function of psychosophy, because every psychosophic type has a vulnerable third function, and every person has a so-called task during the lifetime to develop this function. And for example, we can have two persons with the same psychosophic types, and one of them will be more advanced in his work on third function, and the first one can be quite the same as he was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So the third function shall be developed during lifetime, and that is the difference between different people with the same psychosophic types. And the time of appearance. Socionics appeared in 1970s, while psychosophy appeared a bit later, in 1990s, and there is a huge difference between these typologies in the fact that we have different quantity of people that worked on this theory, because socionics was created by a huge collective of people who were interested in socionics, who took part in socionic conferences, and that is why we have nowadays a huge number of socionic directions. We have many versions of socionics and so on. While psychosophy was created by one single person, Alexander Afanasyev. he created this theory, and in his time, it was 1980s, he got acquainted with Socionics, and he was not pleased with that typology, so he decided to create his own typology as an alternative to Socionics. But it turned out that psychosophy has not become an alternative to Socionics. It just made us a different view from a different angle to human psyche. So that is why these two typologies, Socionics and psychosophy, do not contradict each other in any way. They just complement each other. They are describing a person from different angles, and they have no any contradictions between them. It is a small scheme that I made to describe the main idea that we pursue when we type, for example, or when we study human psyche. It is a personality scheme. Here we have a small scheme that describes all the complex of all psychological features that any person has. And part of personality can be described by socionic type. So we have socionic type and psychosophic type, and it is a typical part of any person, because any human being which is mentally healthy has both socionic type and psychosophic type. It is a typical part of any person. Each of us is one of 384. This number can be calculated if we multiply 16 types in Socionics and 24 types in psychosophy. So we have 384 combinations, possible combinations. So it is a typical part of any person, and each of us has unique individual part. It's our heredity, upbringing, personal experience, cultural differences, and so on. Everything that makes us different from other people, even if we, for example, meet a person which has the same socionic and psychosophic type, nevertheless, we are still there's much different between these people because they have different individual part. So if we take, for example, Western typology Myers-Briggs and read the descriptions of types, so we can have a very paradoxical situation. While MBTI, Myers-Briggs, they are trying to embrace all the three parts given in this scheme. They are trying to describe something from socionics, something from psychosophy, and something from individual unique part of a person. That is very ridiculous, because you cannot systematize all the differences that can exist between people, because we have very different way of life, we have different heredity, upbringing, and so on. So it cannot be systematized, it cannot be a basis of some kind of typology. So that's why it's very important to take a very correct part of a person to make a typology of this. It has to have some inner logic in this. So, for example, if we're typing socionic type, we have to listen to semantics. If we're typing psychosophic type, we have to hear the priorities that a person is speaking about. And every priority has to have some certain features, unique number of features that allow us to put this or that function as high, strong, or weak function, and so on. And it is very important when we are typing according to Socionics or according to psychosophy, it is very important to stay away from unique individual part, because we don't care about individual features that a person has, because we are searching for typical part of this person. We are searching for type, which is a part of certain typology. So it's very important to make and to take into account these differences.